The views and opinions expressed by the host of this show are his and his alone. They do not reflect those of this network, his employer, any of the universities he attended, his family and friends, or former roommates, any of the 5 Temptations, the 4 Tops, or any number of the Pips. They may or may not reflect those of the other voices in his head. His dog, however, agrees with him 100%. And now, broadcasting from Venture X Studios in Frisco, Texas, it's the Snarky Parenthetical. Here's your host. He's highly caffeinated and mildly irritated. Here's Lathan Watts.
All right, welcome back to the Snarky Parenthetical. Stan the Man is on assignment, shall we say. So it's basically me flying solo today, so we're going to see how that goes. Thank you, everybody, for checking back in. Hope everyone had a good long weekend. I enjoyed the Independence Day. So a bit of a short week this week. This first segment, I want to talk about a news story I found interesting earlier this week. I came across this a couple of days ago. Amsterdam, the city of Amsterdam, there it is, says, "Stay home to partiers and pot smokers." Now, as usual, some of the quotes are the best part of these types of stories. Amsterdam, if you're not familiar, if you find the story and read it, has legalized marijuana and has for many, many years. They also have legalized prostitution, sex work, legalized lots of other things. And apparently they don't like some of the tourists that have started showing up to take advantage of all that. So, a couple of the good quotes from the article here. The problems are the uncontrollable groups of drinking Brits, the low-budget tourists who throw all their waste on the streets. Another quote here from Cohen's, professor of New Urban Tourism at Holland University of Applied Sciences. Amsterdam is in a lucky position where it could really use the pandemic to try some new things. This is the time to experiment, Cohen said. Probably not the new slogan you want. This is the time to experiment. If you're trying to discourage the pot tourism, maybe not use "this is the time to experiment." All right. A couple other good quotes from this story. Here's one of my favorites. You know, as a lover of history and an appreciator of it, the drunk tourists will always be here. They were already here in the 17th century when sailors were getting drunk in the same bars. It's part of Amsterdam's society. Here's another good quote. Tourists shouldn't think that just because you can smoke a joint here, you can do whatever you like. Amsterdam, I don't know about this one. Here's a quote from the deputy mayor, also from this story. If tourists only want to smoke weed, drink too much alcohol, and visit the red light district, please stay home. You know, Amsterdam, I think the horse is out of the barn on this one. I remember being in Amsterdam many years ago, backpacking through Europe with my college buddy, Marco, if you're listening. Maybe part of this segment's for you. I don't know. But I remember being in like one of the main sort of city square that's hundreds of years old, and just looking around and seeing everything that was going on, all the cafes that had like the coffee menu and then the weed menu, the window shopping that you can do in certain sections of the city, like the red light district and all this. Not that I partook in any of that. But I remember seeing a cop walking around and just thinking, like, how bored does this guy get? Like, what exactly is illegal here? What do these people do? I mean, what are the cops that worried about? So, yeah, like I said, Amsterdam, I think the horse may be out of the barn on what kind of tourists that you're attracting. So that's just a little news story caught my eye this week. And speaking of, the horse is out of the barn, that's a good sort of Southern phrase, Southern colloquialism, if you want to call them that. And that there's lots of them in the South. We tend to have a way with words down here, and it's not that other sections of the country don't, but there's some pretty unique turns of phrase down here, and a lot of the things that I've grown up with, phrases that I heard a lot. I started thinking about them. I was actually talking to Stan about this yesterday, and I was running a few of these past him, and he looked like he'd never heard them before. And so I don't know if all of these things, I wrote down a few I'm going to go through here. Some of these may be sort of common phrases in the South, and some of them, excuse me, might just be common in my family. I just thought they were common. I don't know. Because I got some pretty creative wordsmiths in my family, if that's one way to put it, I guess. So I'm going to put a few of these out here. You can find the Snarky Parenthetical, our Facebook page, or our YouTube page if you want to comment as to whether or not you've heard any of these, or leave a few of your own. So let me just go through just a few, because this could take days if I went through all the stuff that I've heard like this growing up. But they tend to kind of fall into categories. So we got lots of things that the weather is very important in the South, right? I mean, agriculture, farming, all of that. So there's lots of things that we say about the weather. So let me just jump in with a few of these. It's hotter than the hinges on the gates of hell. I'm assuming like the hinges are even hotter because maybe the gates are swinging a lot, letting lots of new people in and out, or in, I guess, don't you get out. Dry, it's so dry outside, the bullfrogs have ticks. Now, that's dry. Okay, I don't know how dry it has to get before ticks start attaching themselves to bullfrogs, but that's one that I heard a lot growing up. Especially where I grew up, we don't get a lot of snow, but we tend to get ice, and sleet. And so, people say, hey, be careful, it's really slick out there. How slick is it? Well, it's slicker than snot on a doorknob. Okay. Yeah, I don't really want to test that out, but I'll take your word for it, that is pretty slippery. Then you've got, some that deal with appearance, in the South, any of these next few that I'm going to say, if you're going to use any of these, to describe someone, you should probably preface it with bless your heart. Because bless your heart in the South is like, it's sort of the equivalent of, it's like the Southern Protestant equivalent of like a Hail Mary for my Catholic friends. It's like almost instant absolution, right? Once you've said bless your heart, or bless her heart, or bless his heart, it's pretty much anything goes after that. Okay, I mean it's just wide open. So if you're going to use any of these talking about somebody's appearance, I would recommend you say bless her heart before you launch into this. Like I said, it's the Southern Protestant version of a Hail Mary. Some of my Catholic friends can correct me on the theology if I'm wrong on that. I've got a lot of Catholic friends. There's a lot of things about Catholic Church that I really admire. In fact, I even, a lot of people don't know this. I considered Catholicism one time. Went to meet with a priest and, decided to do confession, but he called for backup. And that's when I knew, maybe this isn't going to work for me. You're in trouble when the priest calls for backup. Like he walks out there like a pitching coach and just kind of taps his arm like, hey, we're going to need some help in here. Okay, so talking about appearance, always say bless her heart. Ugly enough to stop an 8-day clock. I don't really know what an 8-day clock is. I don't know where that part of it comes from, but if you're ugly enough to stop one, that's pretty bad. Okay, so bless her heart, ugly enough to stop an 8-day clock. Buck teeth so bad he could eat popcorn out of a Coke bottle. Now, I've witnessed folks with bad teeth. Like, I mean, insert your own easy joke here, right? I'm from Arkansas. Lucky that we have teeth, blah, 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 blah. Insert your own jokes there. But buck teeth so bad he could eat popcorn out of a Coke bottle. My first reaction is, how'd you get the popcorn in the Coke bottle? And who's trying to eat out of it? Like, why would anybody even consider doing that? But it's quite the image, when you use that one. let's see. Some of them, deal with just sort of like your condition. Drunk as Cooter Brown. I don't know who Cooter Brown is. I don't. I've looked this up. But he's apparently a legendary alcoholic because I have heard his name invoked many, many times to describe just how drunk somebody was. Lost as a goose. This is another one. I didn't realize that many geese got lost, but apparently it's a thing because this phrase has sprung up. I sort of thought geese had pretty good navigation skills. I mean, they migrate thousands of miles every year. Where I'm from, Northeast Arkansas, is on the flight path for the Canadians, and they always seem to find their way. So that one's always been a little bit of a mystery to me. Lost as a goose. There's so poor he couldn't pay attention, right? Like I think that one's a fairly common one in the South. I don't think that one's as specific to my family. So broke or his credit so bad the bank wouldn't take his cash. That's another one. Another one that I like. Now, most of these are describing sort of bad things, like the weather's so hot or it's so dry. It's really bad stuff. Sometimes something's really good, especially if you're eating something that's really good. Here's one of my favorites. That would make a rabbit slap a hound dog. That's really good. Okay, something's got to be pretty darn good to make a rabbit slap a hound dog. So, you cook something and a Southerner tells you that is a really, really high compliment. There's again, sort of back to the weather. One that I'm going to clean this up a little bit for the public consumption because I'm pretty sure there are probably parts of the country where even saying this phrase would likely get you arrested. But describing how hot it was, I once heard a man say it was hotter than a teenage widow. Now let that sink in for a second. That's dangerous right there. You got to be in company you trust before you drop that one into conversation. But I have heard it again. That one I'm pretty sure is maybe unique to my family. I don't know. Some of the other Southerners can reach out to us and let me know. Feel free to use any of these, by the way. I would say use that one with caution, as I said, considering where you're at and what crowd you're in. Then you've got, here's another one I'll kind of clean up a little bit. Crazy as an outhouse rat. I don't know the degrees of crazy in the rodent world, but I don't know what about the outhouse that makes that rat that much crazier than other rats, and what the baseline for crazy is when it comes to rats. I can imagine that if you were maybe if this rat is like trapped in an outhouse, that would be a special level of crazy that you would go trying to get out of it. Is kind of my interpretation of that. Another one about crazy. Nutty as a squirrel turd. Again, sort of cleaned up a little bit for public consumption, but you get the idea. They eat a lot of nuts. And then this last one that I'll talk about. It's sort of because I have sort of like a personal story for it, and it's not really a Southern phrase. It's just one of those things that people tend to say a lot. I was a kid, eating supper, thought I was finished, said that I was. Mom says, no, there's food left on your plate. You need to finish this, whatever. The conversation, the back and forth. I'm not that hungry, and then you get that phrase that we've probably all heard from moms. Well, there are starving people in the world. In my house, it was usually specific to China. There are starving kids in China. And my response to this, I did not mean to be disrespectful or smart aleck, but I sure got a reaction like I was. Because she said, well, there are starving kids in China. And my reaction was, well, then feed it to them. And not really thinking I was being a smart aleck. Like, I just didn't understand how me eating this is going to help anyone who's starving anywhere in the world, or, specifically China in this instance. Like, how is me eating this helping them at all? Why not just somehow get this food to them? Like, if I eat this, I'm actually lowering the global amount of food that there is. So it doesn't that somehow work against the starving kids in China? I never got that. So, and like I said, I really truly was not trying to be like smart mouth, as we say in the South. I mean, there's another one like that's a bad thing. Like, would you rather me have a stupid mouth? Would you rather your kids be saying stupid stuff all the time? Like, but anyway, my point is on the smart aleck thing is I've come to the conclusion that the only difference really between a smart aleck and being a person who's just known as witty is age. Like, that's really the only difference. When I was a kid, I would make comments like this, and it was like, "Okay, smart mouth," or "Okay, smart aleck." Like, now you make comments like that, and it's like, "Oh yeah, he's a witty guy," which I take as a compliment. I don't know if it's intended as one or not, but that's really the only difference when you get right down to it. Between, when you're 10, you're a smart aleck. When you're 40-something, you're witty. So, all you smart aleck kids out there, just be patient. Someday you'll be witty. And you don't really have to change much. I mean, keep yourself out of trouble. I'm just saying the same thing that people are going to accuse you of being a smart aleck about now. When you're older, they're just going to compliment you and say, "Oh yeah, he's a funny guy. He's a witty guy." So, one other phrase that I should have mentioned. That when something sort of falls flat, it was not, "Hey, this was not a good idea. This was popular." That went over like a fart in an elevator. That's another one. Yeah, I think it's pretty common. I don't think that one's very unique to my family, but it brings me to my point about elevators, which is the thing this week that stuck out in my head that I was like, you know what, I need to talk about this because this I do find mildly irritating. But before I get into that, I need to remind you this week's show is brought to you by the law offices of Bob Loblaw. Bob Loblaw, really smart guy, does a very interesting blog about lots of different legal issues. Bob Loblaw's Law Blog. I would say check it out. He's a good attorney. So thank you, Mr. Loblaw, and everybody check out Bob Loblaw's Law Blog. And say that very quickly if you can. So that's for all you Arrested Development fans. Okay. Here's something that I find mildly irritating. The general lack of elevator etiquette. And what I mean by elevator etiquette, okay, I work in a building that has all of 3 floors, right? This building where we broadcast from, 3 floors, okay? And inevitably, almost every day, I'm coming off the elevator and there will be somebody standing directly in the middle of the doorway and sometimes even trying to get on the elevator before I can even get off of it. And then you got to do this awkward sort of 2-step with them to try, and you feel obligated to say, "Excuse me." And the people getting off the elevator have the right of way, okay? We are living in a society, and these are some of the rules, written or unwritten, that make us a civilized people, okay? How can we... Did this guy just not even fathom the possibility that there's somebody else on the elevator? Somebody else might possibly be using this elevator. The rule is, if you hit the button, you step back and to the side. When the doors open, the people getting off the elevator have the right of way. You let them off, and then you get on. And that saves us all a mild irritation every day. That's all I'm asking. It really is. Like, just think. Like, hit the button, step back, and to the side. So, one other thing. How are we on time? All right. So, one other thing that I just noticed as I was kind of walking in here that's also mildly irritating, especially this time of year. I am just absolutely getting eaten alive with mosquitoes today. I don't know how I'm not seeing them. It's like they're everywhere. And I leave the house fairly early in the morning, go to the gym on the way to the office. And yesterday from the walk out of my garage into my car, I was like, why am I itching? And I look down and I've got like 5 brand new mosquito bites in whatever 30 seconds it took me to get out of the garage and into my car. Just came in here not long ago. I was like, I looked down, here's 3 new ones on my forearm. It's like, I don't understand the point of these insects. This is one of the questions I'm going to have for God when I get there. Even in Job, when Job questions God and God kind of lays into him and gives this grand tour of the universe and points out all of his grand creation, and he's asking Job questions about it, he didn't bring up the mosquito. I've got to ask him about that one. And it just drives me insane. I don't get it. And like where I'm from, Northeast Arkansas, we grow three things, right? Cotton, rice, and mosquitoes. You would think I would be used to this at this point, but I'm not. Up there, the rice fields, they are at least kind of partially flooded, almost year round, which just breeds these like gargantuan mosquitoes. They don't even really bother to bite you up there. They just kind of carry you away, and you're never seen from or heard from again. I clearly remember playing Little League Baseball, standing in center field, and both coaches come out of the dugout and just yell at everybody on the field, "Okay, boys, cover your mouth," because the mosquito truck had backed up behind center field. And so I'm literally standing there in center field with my hand over my mouth while the mosquito truck fogs the entire field. You just have to stand there for a few minutes and wait for it to clear where I could see all the way to home plate. And it's like, okay, play ball. Breathing in God knows what chemicals we were using back then to try to kill all of these winged spawn of Satan. But there it is. That's one more thing, that I just find mildly irritating this time of year. Because there are times of, there's a few hours a day around here where it's actually pleasant, where you'd like to go out, in the morning before it gets ridiculously hot, in the evening once the sun is down. It's actually bearable. You want to sit outside on the back porch, hang out by the pool or whatever. Better bring a flamethrower, because that's the only thing that's going to keep these beasts off of you. And so it just makes the summertime that much more irritating, shall we say. So there's a couple of things. Usually just kind of stick to one, but worked in a couple this week. I find them mildly irritating, and I think you should too. So we're going to wrap things up here. Stan the Man will be back. Never fear. Thank you for listening to just me ramble on today. Thank you to Brett and everybody at the JPK Network. We will be back next week. Check out Bob Loblaw's Law Blog. I just like saying that. And it's been the Snarky Parenthetical on the JPK Network.